It doesn't matter if it's dawn or dusk, because you're not prepared and saved from the new Hanzo. Stand up! Vanguard! Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we've got a lot of new card reveals, because last Friday we got a reveal stream where they not only revealed the new Hanzo, but surprisingly enough they also revealed the entire Spike Brother package out of nowhere. So to not make this video any longer than it should be, in this particular video we're gonna focus on the new Nubatama cards and all the shenanigans they give the clan accessible to with the new upgraded Hanzo. And then next video tomorrow we're gonna dive into the new Spike Brother cards and see what the new Dudleys can bring to Spike Brothers, or should I say Rising Nova the clan. So with that introduction out of the way, let's dive straight into these new cards for Nubatama, and we're gonna start off with a new grade 1, which is Evil Stealth Dragon Kage Sarashi, and its abilities are act on Rearguard Circle, cost, retire this unit, and call up to 2 Evil Decoy tokens to the Rearguard Circle. Then, if you have a Vanguard with Hanzo in its card name, cost, put a card from your hand into the soul, search the deck for up to 1 card with Hanzo in its card name, reveal it, and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. So these are basically 2 skills in one. So let's analyze them and see what this grade 1 actually can provide to us. Now, his first part basically allows himself to be traded off for 2 Evil Decoy tokens. And what Evil Decoy tokens basically are, there are tokens that have 0 power, 5k shield, and can intercept from the back row. So they give us basically extra shield onto the board that might help us in sticky situations, and they synergize nicely with Protect too. Now, of course, that isn't the only thing about Evil Decoy tokens, because the whole archetype around Hanzo interacts with these decoy tokens, either using them as resources, buffing them, utilizing them for multi-attacks or other shenanigans. So there is definitely more value to them than just the shield value. And creating 2 tokens for 1 unit is actually a pretty decent trade-off. We've seen this again with other cards, like the very first Grid 1 support card for Hanzo that can bounce itself back, but it costs a soul. So you basically save the soul, but you lose that 1 Grade 1. But not only that, this card has a secondary effect which allows you to trade a card from your hand for a new Hanzo, as long as you have a Hanzo Vanguard. Now, on the surface this might not sound all that amazing, as the only thing that it allows you to do is add 1 soul, you build up your soul, which is kind of useful for the Hanzo archetype, and you search your deck for a grade 3, so you deck filter. But once we take a look at the new grade 3, the new Hanzo, then suddenly this part of the skill is incredibly important and incredibly powerful. So to have a better understanding of what this grade 1 provides, let's take a look to the other cards, and once we see the new Hanzo, it will probably click how this card and how this archetype is going to function. Now, for the new grade 2, we've got Evil Stealth Dragon Yami Shibuki. And Yami Shibuki has the abilities Continuous Rearguard Circle. During your turn, this unit gets power plus 5k for each of your grade 0 rearguards. We've seen this skill a couple of times where one of our grade 2s or one of grade 1s gains power for the amount of tokens that we have. Only this card is a bit more useful than those specific token support cards, because you can even call down triggers or just random grade 0s with skills, and this card will still benefit from them. So it can be a really nice beater, which the Hanzo archetype lacks to some extent, where power lines might be their biggest issue, except for the Vanguard attack. Now, his second ability is actually really useful, and it synergizes with his first one, because that's Auto and Vanguard to Rearguard Circle. When it attacks, cost counterblast 1 and return another rearguard to your hand, and call up to 2 Evil Decoy tokens to the Rearguard Circle. So basically this is another card that allows us to be more aggressive onto the board, especially in the early game, because we can call down grade 2s or grade 1s, attack with them, and then bounce them back to our hand where they are safe, and then we can use them again. So we also get more use out of on-blaze effects. But on top of that, we basically create 2 Evil Decoy tokens. And this is really nice, because those are effectively 10k shield that we put onto the board, split among 2 5k shield interceptors. So that's really nice against a aggro deck that comes with poke numbers. But on top of it, It also synergizes with his Rearguard skill, where it immediately gets an extra 10k power buff because those tokens are also grade zeros. So it synergizes with itself, where it becomes a stronger beater while also utilizing your cards more efficiently and protecting them at the same time, while also upgrading the amount of shield value that you might have at all times. So this as a grade 2 is actually really useful in all kinds of circumstances, especially in the Evo Decoy token deck, where it can create those amount of Evo Decoy tokens. So Yami Shibuki is a really good grade 2, but it becomes even better when we take a look at the new Hanzo. So let's do that, shall we? So here we have the brand new grade 3 Evil Stealth Dragon Tasogare Hanzo. And Tasogare Hanzo has the abilities Auto from a hand. At the beginning of your opponent's turn, if your Vanguard is Evo Stealth Dragon Akatsuki Hanzo, aka the old Hanzo, cost, discard 2 cards from your hand, write this card as rest, and all of your rearguards get shield plus 5k until the end of turn. At the end of the turn, write a Evo Stealth Dragon Akatsuki Hanzo from your soul as rest. Okay, so there is quite a lot to analyze here. So first off, to activate this skill, we need to be able to sit on the old Hanzo. This is not really that hard of a feat to accomplish because we have our grade 3 searchers and there are quite a lot of draw effects available to us, so this shouldn't be the biggest issue. But then we can discard 2 cards and write this card from our hand. So effectively, to utilize this effect, we go -3 in hand size because we lose 2 cards, and we then also lose this particular card because we need to write it. But as soon as this is a protect deck, we either get that card back into a Sentinel PG in our hand, so the grade 3 turns into a Sentinel PG, or we get the Protect 2, which effectively synergizes with the Evo Decoy tokens and our Interceptors, which now also get an additional 5k shield. So effectively, what we do, we trade 3 cards from our hand to gain a bit more shield onto the board and a potential Protect marker in our hand. Now on the surface level, this might sound really bad to neck ourselves -3, especially at the beginning of our opponent's turn. Now, this effect can be really good against a non-control deck, because if we're up against a control deck, yeah, then giving our Interceptors extra 5k shield isn't really that great, because our opponent just removes them from the field. And it's very important to note that it will only work with our Interceptors, because this specifically states rearguards and not units, so Guardians will not gain the extra 5k shield buff. But this actually synergizes really good with Hanzo, because as I already explained earlier in the video, we have these Evo Decoy tokens that can intercept from the back row, so we have those Interceptors probably around 4 to 5 in a single turn, so that's a lot of extra shield we generate. And with Protect 2, those shields can become even higher. And once we take that in consideration with the 2 discards, it might not be as bad as it seems, because if we discard 2 5k shields, then if we can intercept with 2 units, we break even in the amount of shield value that we trade off for this skill. And then on the same page, we trade a grade 3 in our hand for a perfect guard, which is probably a lot better. But it can also be a Protect 2 in some circumstances, which can be really good in your synergistic plays with Hanzo that can potentially multi-text on those circles, or use that circle multiple times with all those different Evo Decoy tokens. But we can take this a step further, because if we're up against a multi-tech clan, then maybe ditching all those excessive amount of perfect guards that we have in our hand for more shield value on our Interceptors, and maybe higher Interceptors with Protect 2, might be way beneficial to us than having those Protect markers in our hand in the first place, or those Sentinels. And at the same time, if we're up against a clan or a deck that utilize a guard restricted deck like Gavriel with Hamiel, then having those Sentinels in hand doesn't really mean anything. So if we can discard them for this cost and turn those into higher shield value on our Interceptors and higher and more Protect 2 markers onto the field, then it might actually help us to survive against those Hamiel attacks, because we increase our usable shield value. So on the surface level, this skill might sound really bad, as we need to discard quite a lot of cards, and upping our shield value onto the board might not sound as much, but in certain circumstances, this might actually save you the game if you play your cards right. But that's not all, because there's another layer on top of this skill, because as soon as we write our Vanguard, we get more soul. And at the end of the turn, we write the old Akatsuki back onto the Vanguard circle. So we still get that extra Protect marker onto the board or in our hand if we survive the turn. So in the long run, we gain even more advantage. But this is all just part of Tasogare Hanzo's second effect, because his second effect is Auto from Soul. When your Vanguard with Hanzo in its card name attacks, cost, retire a grade 0. call this card to the rearguard circle, and until the end of turn, this unit gets power plus 20k and can attack from the back row. At the end of the turn, put this unit into your soul. If you put it into your soul, call an Evor Decoy token to the rearguard circle. So, on surface level, basically what this skill allows us to do is multi-attack with a strong beater. Because if we have a grade 0 rearguard, which can be a trigger onto the field, or it can be an Evor Decoy token, the moment that our Vanguard attacks, we can swap basically that trigger unit for the Hanzo from our soul. It becomes a 32k beater that can attack from the back row. It attacks, and then at the end of the turn, it goes back into the soul, and it creates an Evor Decoy token. And this, you can do this turn after turn after turn after turn every single time, because you generate the resources you need to use this skill, and then you do this every single turn, which is really good. The only question is, how do you get this Hanzo into the soul? Well, to answer that one, it basically does it with his first skill from hand, where you can write it, and then you write an old Akatsuki Hanzo back onto the Vanguard circle at the end of your opponent's turn. So it's a really nice synergistic play with himself. But this is just scratching the surface, because the more important thing about this skill is that it isn't once per turn hard restricted by the effect. Meaning, if you have multiple Tasogare Hanzos in your soul, you can activate them all at the same time. And having a back row of grade 0s isn't really that hard to do for the new Matama deck. And this is also where the grade 1 comes into play, where we can ask ourselves, how do we fill the soul with enough targets for this card? Well, of course, we can just hard ride him. We can use its hand effect to put him into the soul during our opponent's turn when we're already ridden our normal Hanzo the previous turn. But we can also use Kagesarashi to put the Hanzo into the soul from our hand. Because if we have a Hanzo in our hand and we already are on a Hanzo, we can call the grade 1, retire it, create 2 Evor Decoy tokens, which are immediately also targets for the multi-attack, then put the Hanzo from our hand into the soul, search out another Hanzo, which then can be utilized the following turn as a defensive tool to increase our shield value, and then basically go from there. But those are just a couple of options that we have available to basically have multi-attacks of 32k beaters, because the old Hanzo is also a 32k Vanguard beater himself. So we have strong attackers. But on top of that, we can extend our multi-attacks even further with the already present support cards within the clan. A good example is Stealth Rogue of Barbarity Akaro, that allows you to multi-attack itself from the back row if you sacrifice 2 grade 0s. So you can have a back row attacker, and that can already attack, and then you have those grade 0s in the back row as well, and those can turn themselves into Tasogare Hanzo. But you can take that even further if we combine that with the new grade 2 Yami Shibuki. Then you can attack with that grade 2 in the back row, then attack with the new grade 2, it bounces back that grade 2 that already is in the back row and creates 2 new Evor Decoy tokens, which then can be sacrificed to multi-attack with Hanzos that come out of the soul to make even more attacks. But on top of that, you also have a grade 2 Stealth Fiend Gonohi, which can bounce itself from the field and recall herself onto the board to have basically 2 attacks in one circle. So this deck has a lot of multi-attack tools. And if you play your cards right, you could easily have 7 attacks, which most of them are around the 32k numbers, which are pretty good attacks. And you end up on a board with a lot of Evor Decoy tokens, which then are extra shield. And interesting enough, because we're going to multi-attack multiple times on the circle as well as the back row, going for Protect 2 and placing them in the back row so you're safe for attacks into your units is even more beneficial to you, because not only will you get more benefit of the extra shield value, you also get benefit from the extra passive power increase onto your units which are attacking from the back row, which means Protect 2 are even more powerful, and then the superior right engine with Hanzo is all the more interesting. And interesting enough, you have a pretty interesting synergy between Yami Shibuki and the new Hanzo, because if you use the new Hanzo, it puts itself onto the field, and then at the end of the turn, it puts itself back and creates a token. But if, for example, you don't have the new Hanzo in your hand and you want to use its hand ability during your opponent's next turn, you can combine it with Yami Shibuki to attack with the Yami Shibuki and then bounce back the Hanzo mid-battle back into your hand before it puts itself back into the soul, so you have that copy in your hand ready for next turn, so you have more plays available to you. So there are a lot of intricate combos and interactions that you can utilize to gain more value out of your cards, to achieve a lot of multi-attacks, or put a lot of shield onto the board. But that's not all. Because we're talking about Nubatama. And Nubatama has a lot of finishing power. And those finishers still work with the new Hanzo build. Because we can either rely on Mizukaze or Kukushigaras. Both of them use Soul, and as we've seen that Soul generation isn't really that hard to do, we can pretty successfully use those cards. But probably Mizukaze is the more useful one, because it requires you to Soul Blast the Great Free. And with all the ways to put in all these Hanzos into her soul, it's no problem to utilize Mizukaze, and with the fact that we can multi-attack with a lot of attacks that beat for high numbers, that guard restrict of Mizukaze becomes all the more devastating. So yeah, the new Hanzo looks pretty damn sweet. On first glance, his first ability, I'm not gonna lie, looks quite underwhelming with the amount of discard you do and the not so much shield value you get in return. But once you look at all the cards and you put the pieces together, you got a very interesting deck on our hands that can do a lot of shenanigan plays, has a lot of combo potential, but also requires the player, the pilot, to think twice about when to use its abilities and how to resolve them. Because this deck punishes the players for its misplays, but it also rewards it when you do your plays right and you do the successful chaining and decisions of when to use specific skills. So yeah, I was already a fan of the Akatsuki Hanzo deck. But this new Hanzo coming in and upgrading the deck, oh yes, I am so much fan of this type of skills and the way how this deck works, because there's a lot of shenanigan plays going on, a lot of substitution jutsu and shadow cloning going on here, and there are still even more things to discuss and to analyze about this deck. Like, I haven't even really talked about the original Evo Decor token support with the grade 1 and the grade 2 that generates these tokens and can utilize them. So there is even more things to explore and things you can do to upgrade Hanzo and to do your plays. So don't underestimate this deck, and don't give it a simple pass just so you think that it doesn't give you enough things to do, because there's a lot this card provides and a lot of intricate combos. Will be tier 1? Probably not, but will be tier 2 and a heck of a lot of fun to play. You can bet your ass that it would be. But that's about everything that I want to discuss in today's video. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these new Hanzo support cards and the new Hanzo as well. I'm personally a fan favorite of these type of skill designs, how it works. It also has this interaction on your opponent's turn a little bit. So I'm very curious of what your stance is on this take and what you think about the new upgrade to Nubatama. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one.